Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete.
Hello, Nikki. Oh, man. Oh, I just had a Seinfeld flashback.
I know, right?
You're like,
yeah.
You're my kooky neighbor, and you knock on the door, and it's, hello, Nikki.
Hello, we're doing a podcast.
Yes, we are. This is part 2 of our Living with ADHD. Maybe it's part 3 now. Part 3 of our Living with ADHD series. Oh, this series doth grow.
It does. At some point, we're not even going to say part 3, part 4. It's just going to be part of the series because we really don't know how it's all going to.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's part 19.
Right,
they keep coming in.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 more interviews we want to talk about today, and then one more that was a little bit longer that is going to run all by its lonesome coming up. So we're very excited to keep this thing rolling. And believe me, this is not the last time we're going to be doing this. So if you're listening to this thinking, hey, I get it now, maybe I should submit a story and do a little interview. You just,
That's right.
Hold your breath just a little bit. We'll get right back to you because we're going to open this up again at some other time. Very excited about it. Before we kick off our 3 stories today, head over to TakeControlADHD.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list. We'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. Connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at TakeControlADHD. And if this show has ever touched you, head over to patreon.com/the ADHD podcast and become a supporting patron. Patreon is listener-supported podcasting. It allows us to keep growing and investing our time and effort and energy and tools into this show thanks to the direct support of you as members. To everybody who has already become a supporting patron, these folks they could even be watching us record this show live. They get access to the live stream of our recording sessions. They get access to early episodes as we produce them. They get access to our online Discord community and members-only channels there. There's a thriving community in Discord, and they are getting access to new stuff on the way. So patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. We sure appreciate your support.
And I have something to add.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. So I know I've talked about study hall in the past, and we're coming up on a what would you call it? A promotion. So every 10 weeks, what I do is I give the opportunity for people to purchase basically 10 weeks of study hall for 8 weeks of study hall. And that's happening now. And so if you're interested in joining our study hall on Thursday afternoons, you're going to have this opportunity for this promotion up until... And I'm going to give you a specific date, even though I know that some of you will listen to this much later in your lifetime. But for those that do listen to it now, the date for the promotion will end on March 25th. So I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. March 25th it is.
All right.
Get in there, get that study hall. All right. Let's talk about, let's live with ADHD. Who are we going to start with today? We're starting with one of, can I just say?
A ray of sunshine.
One of my favorite people. Just joy, even just saying her name.
I know.
Right?
Active Discord member, Miss Ellie.
Ellie. She's telling her story. She's going to tell her story about her experience, her diagnosis, and going through school. And there's just some brilliant little nuggets in here. I hope people get a lot out of this and just smile. If you're not smiling by the end of listening to Ellie, there's something we need to talk about your wiring. There you go.
So I figured I would talk about how I was diagnosed twice with ADHD, actually. So I was first diagnosed in 2006 when I was 16. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot earlier. I always wish it could have been, diagnosed earlier because by age like 5, I was pretty aware that something was different. Mm-hmm. And I mostly managed to get by in school just on, I loved books and I was engaged during class, even if I also talked too much during class.
Mm-hmm.
So teachers liked me, and I managed to get by. And then by high school, though, the homework load, I was in a lot of AP classes. And so the homework load just started to get too much, and I was pulling all-nighters all the time.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, she's clearly trying very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And this should be the amount of effort we see her put in, she should be getting more out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents noticed something was up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if any teacher specifically suggested that I get evaluated. But they were aware too.
Mm-hmm.
Like clearly I got a lot of comments like doesn't work up to full potential.
Yeah.
A pleasure to have in class, but needs to try harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then luckily I had one of my best friends, Evan, was ADHD as well.
Oh, okay.
And he had been diagnosed when he was like 6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Typical diagnosis age for a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we hung out a lot, and he was like, Ellie, trust me, you are ADHD, your textbook, even if you haven't been diagnosed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I largely credit him with kind of spurring, like, we should probably look into this.
Yeah.
And there were fewer online resources then.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it was my parents looked up how to find a doctor to evaluate me.
Mm-hmm.
I was super nervous they would say I was just faking it or something. Because even in 2006, that was kind of there was already kind of that, like, is it overdiagnosed? Are
Is it
people
real?
faking it to get meds?
Yeah.
So, but he talked to me for just like an hour
Mm-hmm.
and then was like, yep, you're ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, apparently it's very obvious to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I started on meds. I was on Ritalin or Adderall, I can't remember, but a low dose, relatively speaking. And I didn't really like the side effects on it.
Yeah.
But I took it through high school, and I think it definitely helped. But there wasn't a lot of communication on other ways that I could help treat my ADHD. Like nowadays, there's so much focus on diet and exercise and
Sleep,
time management skills, sleep. Yeah. And I was definitely still not getting enough sleep in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, don't get me started on, theater schedule and then getting up at, 5 a.m. to go to orchestra practice or something. But
Yeah.
it's not conducive, that's for sure. And so I skated by though. I managed to get by on the meds.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to college and I tried to get accommodations, but there wasn't a lot of guidance on what I was even supposed to ask for.
Oh, interesting. Even at the college level, there wasn't a lot of information, huh?
Yeah, it was still it's surprising because like by then there was starting to be more of a thing. So you'd think they would have caught up, but it was a pretty small college though.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I went to student support services and I said, like, I have ADHD, I have a diagnosis. I'd like to, what sort of accommodations can I get? What would be most helpful? And they actually said, and I hope this isn't representative of the entire support services group there. It might have just been I got some student who didn't know any better at the front desk. But they said, like, oh, we'll see what we can do. But it's not like you have a real disability like dyslexia. So,
oh no.
And I was just so frustrated and annoyed. Of
course you were. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I was just like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
So and then plus there's paperwork involved with getting accommodations.
Yes.
And so I just kind of let it drop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And luckily I had professors that were very understanding. So I had professors that I was always like the last person to finish up my tests.
Mm-hmm.
But I got good grades on them. So professors would let me stay late to finish them.
Yeah.
And I had professors that were understanding about deadlines.
Mm-hmm. So you were getting your own accommodations regardless of the student services. You were working with the professors. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I'm really glad I went to a small school because I had that personal level of attention that my professors were able to say like, yeah, I know her and she's in class all the time. She knows her stuff. It just takes her longer to get it down on paper.
Yeah.
So that kind of connection was really vital. And that definitely improved as I got further along and I was taking a lot of the same professors in the same subjects as I got more specialized. Then I graduated college with pretty good grades. And that was, definitely probably lost some years of my life from cumulative lack of sleep, but
yes,
but I managed it. And then for some reason, I thought that I didn't need meds in the real world, so I just stopped taking them.
Oh, okay. How did that go for you? How did that work?
Not great.
Yeah.
Some of the early jobs I had were basic enough that it didn't really catch up with me until later. But there was one job where it was just really boring for me. And so that definitely made it worse. But I also started working out at a gym all the time. And so I think I was compensating.
Yes.
And but I still hated the job, but I felt really good being at the gym all the time. And then we moved and I got a new job in 2005. And then I was also planning our wedding for the following year.
2005 or 2015?
2015.
2015. Okay.
2015.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I thought you were 16 in high school in 2006. So how did that work?
2015. I have so much trouble with the early decades of the aughts. I'm always like,
I understand. Yes.
So 2015,
yes.
I got a new job and we moved. And so there wasn't a gym that was as convenient. So I stopped working out as regularly. And the job was a much better fit and it was really interesting, but it was also much more demanding. And so the cracks started to show a little bit more. And then I'm sure anyone who's planned weddings with ADHD can attest that it is very stressful.
Yes.
My mom helped a lot, but she also lived out of state. So a lot of the just local meeting with vendors, day-to-day stuff fell on me. And I managed, and the wedding was beautiful and totally worth it, but it was definitely just months and months of stress. And then combined with work stress, and I know for sure I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't, trying to have any sort of work-life balance. So I don't know if you can call it like a mini nervous breakdown or something, but I definitely was not doing well by 2016. And so I realized, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have gone off my meds. Like, is that what's going on here? And by that point, it had been so long since I had been diagnosed, I realized I would have to get diagnosed again, or at least have someone confirm my diagnosis.
Right.
So I looked up a psychiatric nurse in my area, which is a good, I find there's often not room to see some of the top psychiatrists or, so a psychiatric nurse is often, I find she's just as good and she had more room for patients.
Right. And they take a little bit longer usually, and they can still prescribe the medicine.
Yeah. And so I still had that anxiety that she was going to think I faked it, even though I had been on meds for 10 years before. And she was like, no, you seem ADHD. So, she had to try me on a couple different types of meds first because Vyvanse has that thing where insurance won't cover it until you've proven that other types don't work.
Oh, right.
But she was understanding that I had said I had remembered the side effects of the Ritalin and Adderall. And I was like, I don't think they're the ones for me. But we tried them for a couple weeks each. And now I'm on Vyvanse, which I know a lot of our community is a big fan of.
Yes.
And so, and then again, though, things didn't magically get easier. It definitely helped a lot to start seeing someone about it and to be back on meds. And that was really, so 2016 was kind of the start of my current, I hadn't really done a lot of research on ADHD before, despite knowing I had it. And thanks to the internet and
Right.
just the plethora of ebooks. And I found your guys' podcast and all of that combined. I definitely hyper focus on ADHD research. So I'm pretty knowledgeable now, but even then I still have to like remind myself to put those things into practice on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And now that I'm actually expecting my first kid, I had to go off my meds though for that. And so now I'm dealing with like a third chapter of my story, in which I try to figure out, okay, now I really need to look at those other strategies like sleep and diet and exercise. To try to make up for the fact that I'm not on medication.
I'm curious to know, now that you can't take your meds, you probably can't rely on caffeine all that much with being pregnant. What are the things that you have found that help you get through the day?
I'd say, I did discover that meds and caffeine I was relying way too heavily on. Especially the caffeine. That was I hadn't realized how much of a coping strategy that was for me.
Yes.
So now and I can't pull all-nighters. I'm in school right now too. I went back to business school. And so I can't pull all-nighters to finish my homework. So I did get accommodations in grad school though.
Oh, great.
So that has been a lifesaver. So it is worth the effort.
Yes.
And they were much more understanding than my undergrad.
Isn't that interesting that just a 10-year difference can make, that's crazy.
There's even a note on all of my syllabi that says, make sure, like, we do have disability accommodations if you have something like ADHD or another learning disability.
Yeah.
So ADHD is actually like the flagship one.
Yes.
that they mentioned.
Yes. Oh, that's really good to know that.
So accommodations and I fidget a lot.
That's right. You know, a lot of you have a lot of fidget toys and ideas, right?
I do. Yeah. I'm a big fan of fidgets, even for adults. You have to search a little harder to find the ones that are. I personally love the ones even that are made for kids and have glitter and bright colors. But I also have found a lot of fidgets that are, quiet enough to use during Zoom meetings and discreet enough, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd say those two things. And music has always been a good, having some sort of energetic music or white noise or something while I study.
That's a really good point. Because yes, I think music for sure can energize you if you're starting to get tired or get distracted. Take a little break, do a little dance, whatever you need to do. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing to our listeners a little bit about your experience. And we thank you so much.
It was great being here.
Like the whole idea of ADHD being the flagship thing, like when she says, so it's like the flagship.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
10 years later.
Oh, how far we've come.
I know.
That was amazing. I love it. And I love just watching, Ellie disappeared from the community for a while. She got busy with school and such, but she's back, and I'm so glad that she's back and participating because her insights are fantastic. Definitely connect with Ellie on Discord if you jump in there. Also, I have a headcanon of her future because you remember You've Got Mail, the Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks. Yeah. So I have this fear for Ellie that she goes and opens a bookstore in New York and becomes the Meg Ryan character, but because she's just good at it, she actually is Tom Hanks all along and ends up running like Barnes and Noble extra large. Yeah, right. And she brings books back. That's what I think is going to happen.
She's bringing books back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Who's next on our list? We've got another great story, and I think there are a couple of more like ADHD taglines in the story coming up.
Yes, and this is from a listener and a former client, Karen.
Outstanding. Shall we just start? Any other setup?
No, let's go ahead and start.
Let's just do it and see what happens.
Until I started realizing that most of my friends had ADHD. I don't know, is that my type of person? I'm very attracted to ADHD people. But I had always felt really ashamed and very, like I was stigmatizing myself because of the ADHD. And, I was sort of, just taking all of the myths about ADHD or it not being real or medication vacations and concepts like that and applying them to myself, which, it was a disaster. And then, I guess most recently, like when I went and did my master's, there was a kid and in my class, a peer, and, he was late for class a couple of times. And I thought, oh, is he okay? But for me, when I'm late, I'm very hard on myself. Or I was very hard on myself. And I would be like, oh, they're going to think I don't care and this, that, and the other. And then I need accountability to get my work done. So I just kind of kept asking everyone like, oh, I study here. Does anyone want to come study? Like I have all the books. So this guy kept showing up and, we sat down to study together one time and it was like, oh, he's like me. I get it. But he also was a very late diagnosis, and I'm in Scotland, and in the UK, it's very hard to get proper treatment and medication if you have inattentive type. Like I have classic 12-year-old boy ADHD. I recently in the pandemic broke my nose, like crawling on and off a computer chair with wheels because I still have not learned don't stand on a chair with wheels. And a week later, I fell off a chair with wheels again.
Oh no.
So, but yeah. if you have the inattentive type, it's harder to get a diagnosis. And so we worked together. You were my ADHD coach for, I don't know, maybe 2 years. And I learned so many skills there. And now I'm about to finish my master's. I had to take a pause because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I found that, that when I was helping my friends, just teaching them some things, strategies that I learned, the alarms and most importantly, how to advocate for himself at the school and with doctors and getting him the information. I think Dr. Russell Barkley has really good things. I was like, don't read this. It's too much. It's not for us, but take this to your doctor. Because he has, my friend had sleep problems and I started on melatonin and that had really helped me. And, but just learning how to advocate, for myself, I didn't do it, but I had the information. But then I started realizing that my friend has been left behind because he doesn't have this information. And then I realized it's really important for me to sort of be out as ADHD and tell everyone everywhere and announce it at class and announce it every time I go anywhere, announce it to the bank and say, oh no, I'm sorry, but this is not accessible. And it was really difficult for me because I had to face that my ADHD is actually a disability and it does hold me back. But my ADHD doesn't hold me back so much as the world is not accommodating, just some blanket accommodations that are cookie cutter that they give everyone doesn't work for ADHD. It's about sort of finding out how your ADHD affects you and then articulating that effectively and then insisting that you're accommodated because it's at least in Scotland and in most places in the US, it's your right. And you have to stand up for your rights because if I don't stand up for my rights and if I don't teach my friend how to stand up for his, then we're all done. And so I think during the pandemic and as I was doing my master's, I realized that it was more it was important to become more active in the ADHD community and to just be more vocal and not treat it was a shame as I had sort of taken on, growing up and in my younger adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really powerful for me. And also in sort of trying to be more helpful and trying to like pass on any little tidbits, for my friends, I found that I started taking care of my own ADHD better because I sort of had to walk the talk.
Right.
And so things got better for me too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still like, we moved at the end of December and, we got sick for 2 weeks, and that sort of like threw off my whole plan of like how we were going to unpack and organize.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a lot. And I still don't I am completely time blind. I don't think I have yet met a person as time blind as I am.
Oh, really?
It does not exist to me at all. But now that's fine because I just think, 5 minutes, 5 years, these are the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same. So I have, I have alarms and different, but I have multiple alarms and backup systems. And I have a digital and an analog system. And although I was very resistant to even doing the digital and analog system because it feels like that's taking more time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does take more time to set up and it takes more time to implement. But without it, if I wander into a room and I don't have my phone, but I have my notebook, then I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I don't have my notebook, but I have my phone or my watch, then I'm, because I'm losing things and I get lost in my own house.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I walk into a room, I'm like, okay, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll have a little Post-it note with my list of the next objectives.
That's good. That's great. Yeah.
Like a little nap. It's like a video game. And sometimes you need to check like what quest you're on.
Right. Well, what a perfect example too of creating your own accommodations in your own home, of what you need. Mm-hmm.
There are Post-its everywhere and little notepads because I do need to write down the next quest very often, especially because the house isn't completely organized now. And I am very, very affected by my environment. So once everything gets organized and with the trusty label maker and, the order of operations chore chart is like filled out and everything is systemized. Like it's taking a while to set up, but having had set up such a thing before, I know that my life will become so much easier and manageable. And I'm very lucky that I have put everything, including my master's, on pause during this move because I am no longer, overcommit. Like I realize now that I need to do one thing at a time. And if my environment isn't in order, I won't be able to do much else. So that has to come first.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate routine and systems, my brain really needs it because I do a lot of very cerebral work. And so by systemizing it, I take all of the executive decision out of what room to walk into next, or what to eat next, or what to wear, or how to go about like the mundanity of being human in the modern world. And so that when I do my my research or my writing work, I'm able to really shine and outperform my peers that are neurotypical because I have accommodated my ADHD in my life so that it can do, the connections and the jumps that my brain can make when it is not stressed out from too many executive decisions in the daily life. It is really amazing. And that has been really, really transformational to be able to see that actually it isn't random, like when I am like able to be smart or when I am like completely unable to remember my name. It has a lot to do with how I'm managing my ADHD. And yeah, as you said, if I'm accommodating myself in my daily life, and that means saying no to things that sound really fun. And it you know, it's a bit of putting myself through boot camp sometimes and very unhappy, like, nope. You know, it's, I have an iPhone because I'm lucky enough to, you know, be able to have one, but it's so I can have this screen time.
Right.
Which is so awful to undo.
Yeah.
And then it you know, it just shuts off.
Right.
And the alarm says it goes there, you know, and I started using a Habitica app because I really like games and I'm very competitive. And so, you know, I'm getting to bed at a bedtime because it's a thing that I have to check off every day.
Yeah.
And then I want to win.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's a great app.
That works for me because I know that works for me, and it works for, but you know, it's not for everyone. It really is about trying to figure out like what motivates you. And also to be flexible with the systems, because Habitica works right now, but it wasn't working 6 months ago. I'll probably get, you know, I have to be able to accommodate myself to myself sometimes.
Right. You have to make some adjustments.
And so it is a disability. And that was, you know, I was raised to, you know, to be hush hush about that. But, you know, it's fine. And I find that being able to help my son, who also has ADHD, and teaching him how to advocate for himself, and my friends who are ADHD inattentive type, because there's only ever one hyper type in the group, right? We can have a few inattentive types, but you know, I didn't get diagnosed until I was in my late teens. I think because I'm female,
right?
Because looking back through like my report cards when I was a kid, I was always like, doesn't stay in class, doesn't stay in the seat, standing on the chair. Like, oh
that has wheels on it.
Yes, and I still have not learned.
Yeah.
Well, you know, on the chair. Do not stand here.
Don't stand. Yeah. Well, Karen, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and there's so many great nuggets here, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to talk to our audience and sharing your story. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I got so much out of working with you, and it was really transformational. I'm gonna start my PhD in the fall, and I wouldn't even be able to imagine that only after taking the summer to sit down with everyone and figure out how I'm going to organize this data, because now I realize that is like not even going to attempt it until we know how I'm going to organize this piles of data that I already have too much of.
That's amazing.
She is fantastic.
Fantastic.
She is fantastic. And I have to say, I am so proud of her. Like, I listened to her, and this is the second time I've listened to it, and I'm in awe, because this is what I want for my clients. You know, because when she first came to me, she was ashamed of her ADHD, and she was really behind in her classes. And the thing that she doesn't say, because she wouldn't say it, is she's an excellent writer, and she's very, very talented. And the work that she does is really good. But what was excellent. But what was happening is she was so far behind that, you know, she was scared to go to the professor and say anything. And she did. She mustered up this courage to advocate for herself. And, you know, I think she was really surprised by the reception that she received, because they know she is an excellent writer, and she turns in exceptional work, and they gave her the extensions that she needed, and she graduated and got that degree to move on to the next. And it's so inspiring, Pete. And just to listen to her talk about how she's teaching other people to do this, and how she's so like, just shouting at the rooftop, I have ADHD and it's great. We're not great. She's not saying it's great, but she, it's there. And I love it. I love Karen, and I thank her so much for being on the show and talking about that.
Well, she's so funny and delightful and easy to listen to, and just those. Yeah, her stories are fantastic, and again, so relatable.
Yes,
and
of course,
I mean, we've all fallen off the wheelie chair.
Awesome.
May not have been a wheelie chair, but we've all fallen off the wheelie chair. We got one more today, and this one, you got to set this one up because this one is a little bit different.
Yes, this is a different one, and I thought it might be a nice one to end, although we really aren't ending our series yet because...
And today...
Yeah, for today, we're ending it. So this is an ADHD coach who actually watched our presentation, Pete and I, at the ADHD conference, and we, of course, talked about joy. And she was inspired by our presentation, and this is what she had to say about it. Hi, Leslie. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Before we get started, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do? That would be great.
Yes, thanks for having me. My name is Leslie Robbins, and I am an ADHD coach. I'm also a mother of a couple of ADDers myself, which was the beginning of my journey into the coaching world. And I live right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And and I'm coaching families and individuals right now, kind of the gamut.
Mm-hmm. Great. Mm-hmm. All right. And where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me on my website at leslierobbinscoaching.com.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
That'd be a great place to find me. Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, there is a very specific reason why I want you on the show today. You had watched Pete and I at the ADHD International Conference this year, where we talked about joy jars. And so just to give people a reminder of what joy jars are, we did a presentation, first of all, on just how to create joy, and really felt that it was an important topic, especially during this time of kind of chaos in the world and everything that we've been facing with COVID and everything else. And the joy jar started as an idea of having some kind of like mason jar or something that you could decorate and have it be, or basically you could be as creative as you wanted to be. The thought was, if something brought you joy, you could put it on a piece of paper and you could put it in there. If somebody, it was either an experience or something you noticed or whatever it might be, you could do it in so many different ways. But the point was to be able to go back to that joy jar, pick something out of there when you're having a bad day, add to it as people, are in your home, or you notice something that's going really well with one of your kiddos, whatever it might be. And Leslie, you took this, you really took this and ran with it. So
I did.
So tell us what you did, and I'm curious, before I guess you tell us what you did, what inspired you? Like why did this resonate with you?
Oh my goodness. I'm fascinated with all of the positivity studies that are out there. And it just really resonates with me. I am a glass half full kind of a person. I mean, I always have been. And at one point in the presentation that you guys were giving, you started talking about what happens to your body when you feel joy. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
And I started jotting down some notes, and I was like, oh, this is like, and at that moment, and that was before you guys even started mentioning anything about like ways to implement joy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something there for me. And at that moment, I think I was really inspired because I started noticing that in myself. Like, oh, this is where I'm feeling it. My heart is swelling. It's like this hum of energy that I'm feeling all kind of throughout. And then as you went through the presentation and started talking about these Joy Jar kits, or the Joy Jar, I thought, oh, I could make it into a kit. Mm-hmm. I could give these away for Christmas. I could give these to clients. I could give this to family. And the list kept growing. And I was so excited. I have like 5 pages of notes just from the conference presentation.
Oh, wow. That's great.
I moved those aside and I started like drawing out what I wanted these little Joy Jar kits to look like.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So what did you end up doing?
Well, so I thought, I was trying to figure out how can I make my list was growing, first of all.
Right.
It started with about maybe 12, 15. Mm-hmm. And by the end, I had 70 people on my list that I wanted to.
70 people you touched.
70.
That's
yes.
amazing.
So I'm like, this has to be a little cost effective. So you mentioned mason jars. I'm like, well, yes, that's a great place to start. And then I just started gathering up all different sizes. So nothing was the same. Everything was a little bit different. And I started gathering those things up, and I wanted it not only to be a kit. I wanted them to be able to have everything they needed so they wouldn't have to put anything off to get started.
Smart.
Yes. So I had these little pails that I bought that I put little colorful sheets of paper in and pens and everything was combined. And I made a little booklet too. And I took some of the information from Barbara Fredrickson's positivity book and what positivity is basically made up. And I put some examples in there about that. And I made this little Joy Jar, instruction manual. And I stuck it into the jar. And I added a couple of notes myself about why that particular person brought me joy.
Oh my gosh. That just gives me chills when you just say that. Like, I can't even imagine what the recipient would feel like. So what kind of response did you get?
Well, it was wonderful. And I started actually saving all of the responses. I had handwritten notes from people and texts and emails and everything. And one of my favorite ones was a football coach who said, "Oh, this is right up my alley." And I don't know if I would have ever thought about it,
right.
For that to come from him. And then there was another one. It was one of my clients who's actually been working on really focusing more on staying positive and that type of thing. And she said, this is great because even if I don't put anything in the jar, it's on my desk, it's right out in the open, and I can see the colorful pieces of paper that are in there, and I know there's joy there.
Oh, I love that.
So that was so great. There's moments all the time that happen. It could be a little blip. It doesn't have to be this big, magnificent moment. Right. It could just be just something. And it's just about being in the present and noticing those moments of when your heart does swell and you do feel that energy that comes in and that jar is there for you to just harness it all.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much.
There we go.
That was great.
That's really powerful.
I love it.
It is. That one person
powerful.
touched 70. It's just really lovely.
And
I'm
a
so
manual. She has a joy manual. Like, how awesome is that?
I know. And the football coach. Come on,
right? You just
people.
never know how something like that will touch somebody else. It was really great. I really appreciate her sharing that. And
that could be like a motto for the entire episode. You never know. You never know who has ADHD, who doesn't, who's struggling in their brains, who doesn't, who's going to fall off the wheelie chair, who doesn't, or who is going to really find an affinity with your idea of joy. It's just beautiful. It's really beautiful. So
I love this.
I know. Thank
It's
you,
so
everybody,
fun. Thank you,
for
everyone.
continuing on this journey and listening to these stories. They're so meaningful for us to hear how you are living with ADHD. So thank you for sharing. We mean that very deeply. Thank you so much for sharing and being a part of this series. Until next time, thank you for downloading and listening to the show. Even if you're not contributing to the series, we appreciate your time and attention. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next time right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.